everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I am joined today with my co-host, Jennifer Jurkofsky. I am Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy, and I am a Reiki Master, what else do I do? Celtic Shamanic High Priestess, Crystal Master. I do stuff.
It's
Jen?
one of those days, man.
Why don't you tell us what you do? I just do stuff.
I'm with you. I do stuff. What was it? It was one of my friends, we were talking, and one of her clients was like, "You're a mind magician." I'm like, "I like that one. I like it."
Perfect.
What do I do? I am a registered psychotherapist, a certified Canadian counselor. I'm also a Reiki master, all those energy working kind of stuff. And
And a Sufi and an ordained minister,
Oh,
and all that stuff, all that spiritual stuff. We all do.
Yeah. And I have to admit, the last little bit has been everywhere. I'm here and I'm not here, and and so I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling all that. What we were talking about.
Yeah. So what we're referring to, in case you're not aware, so we are multidimensional beings, all of us. Mm-hmm. And we are quite capable of actually being present, semi-present in multiple dimensions at the same time. So we can have an awareness at various levels in more than one dimension.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when people are, they kind of space out, or they kind of, they're not paying full attention, they're usually off somewhere else. When we talk about being off somewhere else, our consciousness is actually taken off to a different dimension to actually just, do something else. And so Jen and I do that a lot. We're both capable of being very grounded and here as well, though, we must assure you.
Sometimes it feels easier to be still here, and other times it does not.
Yes, exactly. So we have a beautiful message from Susan. Hello, Susan. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us here. She says, have a fabulous show. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And
thank you so much. And ditto here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. It's always great to have people on that we can interact with as well. So, for all of you, I think there's a couple of you on there. So if you're on and want to, say a quick hello, or you want to be involved in the conversation, please do so. For our typical Twillow Talk, Twillow Talk is all about us having candid and authentic conversation. And so we often Jen and I will often have these conversations offline, and we're like, these are fascinating conversations. Or we go down a big rabbit hole and we're like, okay, we should be like online doing this. So anyway, we decided to structure it a little bit more and bring it on. And that's how Twillow Talk started. So what we typically do is that we'll pick a topic from our Diana Cooper and Greg Stewart wisdom cards, and we will talk about it. Okay. So let's see what we have to say, or what we're going to be talking about today. And we have another hello all. Hello, hi all. It just says Facebook user. So if Facebook user would like to share their name, we would love to be able to speak with you directly. In the meantime, let's see what the guides want us to talk about today. Okay. It's all about communication today. So communication, when you communicate honestly, people feel your authenticity and respond accordingly. Truth has a resonance that causes others to trust you intuitively. Your guidance is to speak from the heart and focus on the good and positive. The outcomes of your discussions will reflect this. Communication works both ways, so be truly present when listening. This will improve all your relationships and business dealings. Be mindful of what you say and speak wisely. Forgo gossip and negativity. Instead, choose inspiration and honesty and watch as your relationships blossom. And our affirmation, I communicate honestly and wisely.
I love that. I communicate honestly and wisely reminds me of like the acronym THINK, right? And you're right over there. Okay. And we used to use this.
Just clearing my throat chakra so I can communicate. Sorry, guys.
No, it's great.
Awesome. Hi, Anona.
Oh, man. Yeah. So what I was saying is the acronym THINK, which actually I've used with students, with clients, right? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Right? And kind of running through that idea, right? Think before you speak. And, is what I'm saying, is it truth? Right? So that speaks to the gossip and all of that. Like, we don't want to be sharing something if it's not truth, but then also, is it inspiring? Is it kind? Right? It's all an important aspect of communication. This is interesting that it's communication and you're having that throat chakra come up.
Yeah, I'm sure that says something about me, but we're not going to go there online.
No, but just like for those who are watching too, if you go to communicate something, and if there are throat issues, if there are any kind of things that come up for you, don't just dismiss it, especially in the culture that we live in now, where everything is about colds and everything is about being sick and everything else. And so it's really easy to just be like, oh, I must have just picked up a cold, right? And I think it's a really important piece to okay, yeah, maybe we did, but also take a look at, is there something going on within that needs to be voiced, that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be honored, right? And what can I do to do that? Because even with, physical ailments, spiritual healing can heal the form that we're in as well.
Exactly, because it's all energy, right? Thanks, Susan. She says, so real, so true. Everyone has their own truth, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. Because truth is our perception of the world. So my truth is my perception of the world, right?
Yes.
So, and we have another hello here from a Facebook user, which just shows up as Facebook user.
Mm-hmm.
So hello, Facebook user, if you'd like to give us your name. I'm assuming it's not a Nona, because we do have a Nona on here as well. But yeah. So we're seeing a lot as Facebook user. I'm not sure exactly what that's about on here, but please note that if we don't call you out by name, it's probably because of that. So
yeah,
but we appreciate everybody joining us.
Just a note for people on my page, I still haven't figured it out. I really apologize. I'm not tech savvy at all. So if you want to flip over to one of Tanis's channels, and take a look there in order to comment, by all means do so, or you can always just send me an actual message, and I'll keep an eye out for those.
So. Yeah, and you can go to Twillow Lifestyle on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will be getting those. We should be anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting some that are identified. I think it has to do with people's own privacy.
Yeah, potentially.
For some, because I see some and not others, because I've got like Susan's name is up.
All of our communication issues on our communication topic day.
Exactly. Oh, hi, Shamina.
Hi. Yeah. But I really appreciated, the card and the way it talked about, being honorable with our communication, but also being very open with our communication. And I think that sometimes we tend to not communicate our needs or not communicate what's going on for us. And it's not because we don't necessarily know how to, but we don't want to be a burden, or we don't want to put somebody else out, or we don't want to, um, acknowledge when we need something. And so I think that, that piece about really the importance of being able to authentically communicate is so important.
Absolutely. So just a quick thanks for Susan. She's off to do something else. Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. Yeah, and what is your truth is because it is our perceptions. Our truth and speaking our truth, as long as we're doing it from the heart, right? So really, I mean, authenticity requires us to really do that internal work. Yeah. What is it that you really need to tell them? And we don't have thanks, Susan. We don't really have we don't have control over what other people say or do, or how they act or react. We only have control over ourselves. So really, it's about us speaking our truth but doing it with compassion. So to do that, how do we do that? So we do it with love, right?
With love. But one of the biggest things I've found when it comes to communicating and communicating authentically is recognizing exactly what you said. It's about where I'm at right now. It doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean it's right. This is where I'm at right now. This is my understanding because of my lens, my bias, my experience. This is what I'm seeing in this situation, and I'm open to seeing it differently if I'm not seeing it correctly. But that's really, really hard because we have to recognize our own triggers, our own biases, the things that we come to the table with, and that takes work.
Right. Well, and communicating authentically is not always comfortable for the other person, which becomes not comfortable for us sometimes. But if you accept that it's where we're at right now, this is what we're experiencing right now. It doesn't mean that's not necessarily a reflection on the other person, nor is it necessarily a reflection on, your inner being. It's just where you're at. And that's kind of showing compassion, right? If we can approach conversations and communications like that.
Yeah. Well, and you hear so often, right? Communication is a two-way street. And there's all of these kind of things when you talk to like coaches and things like that about how to communicate and how to communicate effectively. And they talk about, the idea that it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it and all of those other things. And all of that is great. But there's so much more, right? We have to recognize that every time we say something, I wish I could remember where I saw this, but there was a picture that I saw one time, and there was a description with it. And it basically had two people sitting across from each other, and each person had two marionettes. And the marionettes were of the person and the person that was sitting across from them. And basically the idea behind it was, we don't ever just talk to each other. We use our marionette of ourselves and our marionette of you or the other, and we talk between them. So our perception of us talks to our perception of the other. And at that point, communication breaks down. Because if both parties are only talking to their perceptions of the other with their perception of self, they're not actually seeing the other. and they're not truly communicating in a way that is open to experiencing that connection, right? We think we do, but ultimately we're holding some idea of the other being in a certain way. And as soon as we do that, we've put this filter on.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and it goes both ways, because there's a reason why we also have the marionette of ourselves. How do I want to appear? How do I want to show up? How do I want this person to perceive me? Who do I want to be in this conversation? What do I want that to look like? And even if it's completely on a subconscious level, we're still doing that. And so the more we can bring into our awareness, the more authentic we can actually be in our communicating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, the more we can bring awareness to it, you can't manage what you can't see or what you can't measure, right? Or so you have to be able to measure or be aware of, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a business concept, right? You can't manage what you can't measure. It's similar though when it comes to our stuff, because we can't change something that we're not aware of. And so that's where self-reflection and becoming self-aware helps you to be able to make those kind of changes in a way that's more effective.
Yeah.
Because if we don't know, so just like we have a Nona here who says she's working on things, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't realize how many ripples it could make.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and the thing is, when we begin to communicate more openly, especially if that's something that we're not used to, and I can speak to that from my own experience, right? Not being comfortable fully communicating when I'm not okay, or when something has made me sad, right? Like my personality type has always been, since childhood, just shut down. Right. And so it took a lot of work to get to a place, and even still, I need time.
Yeah.
I need to process, I need to think about it. And it's changed, right? That's evolved. Whereas before it used to be, I would just fester with the situation. And now it's gotten to a place where it's like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. What is actually true and real? Is there anything here that actually needs to be addressed, or is this just all my stuff? Right?
A lot of times it is just our stuff, because we do an awful lot of reacting, right?
Yeah. And it's amazing how little we actually have to say when we do that reflecting. Right?
Yeah.
But then when we do, we're able to communicate our hurt in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And instead of, you did this to me and I and you made me feel, or whatever, it's, wow, when that happened, this is how I felt. I know that wasn't your intention. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I really need right now. And it gives the other person an opportunity to actually respond. And they probably might still have their stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think the other piece too is we often communicate and we have this expectation that things will go a certain way.
Yes. And
Right?
that's the other side of that communication piece, right?
Yeah. But that's not always the way the other person is going to, we're not going to always be heard. In human design, they have what we call fractals, right? And so when you think about like the crystalline grid, right? We all have these fractals, and certain people just aren't on the same one as us, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? And so communication in that way, sometimes we will never see eye to eye with certain people, and we will never come to understandings with certain people. And acceptance is huge for that.
Yeah.
We got quite a bit of comments going on there.
We do. So Shem is saying, yes, me too. And then she says, and would she sensitive to leave me alone? Yeah. So, that's speaking to them not being on the same wavelength, right?
Yeah.
And then Susan says, so many don't go that deep with their souls. So it goes over their heads. Many just shut down. Interesting conversations indeed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, we also have one here, Facebook user. Wow, so deep.
Mhm.
Thanks. Yeah. So it's, oops, sorry. There we go. Yeah, and not everybody is going to be that way, right? So we have old souls and young souls, and young souls, they're not quite there yet. They're still learning some of those things because they have to have some more experience. Just like kids have to learn how to do things, our souls have to learn how to do things, and part of that is, I think, communication is really tied into that. The more that we learn as souls, we bring that with us from lifetime to lifetime. And of course, if we're put in an environment where we aren't able to remember what we've already learned, then that doesn't help either, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I wish that they actually taught in school, was how to communicate effectively, right? They try to, I think, through example and whatnot, but we're not teaching it in school, so we're not actually, even our teachers aren't necessarily taught effective communication skills.
No.
Or how to listen openly, or how to communicate in a way that's open.
But in order to teach proper communication, I think we also have to teach proper emotional maturity.
Yes.
Right? Because we as a people are taught from a very young age, and it's our families, it's our cultures, it's our histories, it's everything. We are a reactive species.
We are. Yeah. I would like to think that we're moving out of that a little bit, and that it's starting to shift, but definitely.
Yeah. But the idea of introspection, of taking time away, of finding the pause, all of those things are things that as kids, if we were taught, it would be an incredible change to our everything, right? How we communicate would open up in ways that I don't think that the mind can even comprehend on this level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and those are very fear-based. Like, reaction is always fear-based, as opposed to being able to tune into what that love feeling is, like, vibrationally speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not always fear-based, but when you're having a reaction, it's because you're triggered, and you're fearful that something that happened in the past is going to happen again. So there's a fear in there. Whereas, when you can stop and think about it and respond, then the fear factor is not as big an issue. Not to say that it's not there, because it could still be there, but that's where the emotional maturity comes in. Right?
Yeah. Well, I remember there's a quote from the Dalai Lama that I really loved, and I think it was 8. If every 8-year-old in the world was taught meditation, we could eliminate violence in one generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a powerful thing to think about, because if we had that ability to disconnect more from our thoughts and feelings, if we had that knowledge right from the get-go, I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings, if we could truly connect to that, think about how different our communications would be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, so Anona says here, I feel like sometimes allowing my reaction leads my heart getting me over the hurdle of overthinking. I can free type or just say, this is just where I'm at. I feel like my most common response is a no response.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that speaks to...
Sorry, I just got excited with Shem's thing that they've started meditation in the school and workplace.
They have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mindfulness. They call it mindfulness because I just, but it's just a different word for it. So they've started to do that for sure, which is awesome. Well, I also want to bring up Susan's here. She's been a teacher and mirrored speech and communication. They never discuss this ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, parents, families, communities indeed need to share this new type of heart communication.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And she's added to that, teach this to all the government people and all who control the powers that be. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, but
For sure.
most communication, most decisions in general come from a place of fear, right? Come from
Yeah,
a place of being
exactly.
triggered, come from a place of worry, stress, and fear. And they're all emotion-based decisions. So if we were able to recognize, you know what, like I'm really sad right now. I need to take some time. I need to allow this feeling to flow through me, right?
Yes.
In human design for emotional authority, we talk about riding the wave, right? Somebody who has an emotional authority, you can't make a decision in the highs and the lows. You have to ride it all the way through before you know what's right for you, right? And so if we were able to allow those emotional experiences to be what they are, which is just messengers, right? Emotions come, and I love the Rumi quote, The Guest House. If anybody wants to look it up, it's a beautiful, beautiful poem about how these emotions come, and they come as messengers.
Yeah.
Right? We're not supposed to hold on to the messenger, right? We're not
No.
even supposed to hold on to the message. We're supposed to take it and then do something with it,
Yeah.
and then move on.
Right. And so, and you talk about it in that terms. I often talk about it with my clients as it's energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's energy. So what do we do with energy? We have to process the energy. We can't just push it down, because then we just get all this stuck energy. But we have to allow ourselves to process it. We can't, it's like flow, right? You have to process it, allow it to come up, do what it needs to do, and then release, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I always talk about this. I used to cry so hard, this before my spiritual journey was really, in full gear. And I would push everything down because I was like, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to cry. And when I would finally cry, I'd like almost burst all my blood vessels under my eyes. I'd get all these red spots because I was crying so hard, right? So much energy. And now I allow it to happen and flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had that in years now.
Yeah.
But, I remember it wasn't just I'd cry because I'm sad. It was as soon as you opened those floodgates, it was like,
Yeah.
because I had to process the energy and I had pushed it all down. So, it's just to bring that to your awareness that, if you do it in little bits, when it comes up, it doesn't build up. And because I've had clients come and say to me when I've said, you just need to process it, allow yourself to cry. And they're like, I don't want to cry because I'm opening a floodgate. And then I just sob, right? And I'm like, well, but it's still in there. It's still energy. So if you're not going to allow that, then you have to get it out somehow. So, I mean, you don't have to cry to release the energy. Don't get me wrong. Like, everybody processes their energy in a different way. So you get to know what your processing looks like. Some people yawn, all that stuff. So there's all different. Some people breathe, some people do exercise. Like, there's lots of ways to process the energy, and there's ones that work better for you and ones that don't.
Yeah. When I would get upset or angry, I used to run up and down stairs. It really helped me.
Yeah.
Right?
The exercise. Yeah.
So again, it's about finding that release and allowing the flow. And
Right.
I agree so much about not holding it in. It's interesting because in Carl Rogers talks about I think it's called In Becoming a Person. He talks about the good life. And basically this idea, they talk about the self-actualizing person, not the self-actualized person, right? We're always in process.
Always in process. Yeah.
But
For
this
sure.
idea of being in the good place is not that everything is good around you or that every experience is perfect, but that you are so completely content with who you are that you allow yourself to be whatever you need to be in any given moment. Right. And so we talk about shadow parts, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And we have these parts of us, the angry parts, the sad parts, the resentful parts, and we're scared to let them out. But the thing is, we're scared to let them out because we think they're going to explode and they're going to be uncontrollable. But if they always had a voice and they weren't constantly pushed away, they wouldn't be explosive.
Yeah.
Right? They wouldn't
Exactly.
be these things that we fear them to be.
Yeah.
And so there are healthy ways to communicate anger. There are healthy ways to communicate frustration, right? There are healthy ways to communicate these really hard feelings. But if we're pushing them down, the moment we open it, it is exactly like that. The floodgates open, and now all of a sudden we've done something, communicated something that we didn't want to.
Yeah, because it seems to get skewed, right? The communication gets skewed. And so often that's when we say something that we really didn't mean.
Yeah.
Because the more you push it down, the more you engage that fight or flight response, the more this part of that brain shuts down. And then you're not making good choices in what you're saying. And it all happens like in an instant. So it's not like, we consciously do that. But the mechanics are there. So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Susan here, she says, cried for years, releasing lots of my past lives through crying as well. Yeah, I've done my share of that too. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Yeah, she's released lots in her life. And then she added this. So those who do not let out of their bodies get diseases or sick on many levels. Communication is key. So yeah, for sure. Communication is key, and energy, right? Managing your energy. Those are all, because when we hold on to stuff that we shouldn't, or that we don't want to push down. I don't want to be judgy. I may be being judgy. When we push stuff down that's not for our highest good. Okay.
I like the term pain bodies, and I'll use that with clients and stuff like that. And so we have what I call pain bodies within us. And I like to think of them as like little golems. Like if you think of Gollum from right? Like, oh, my precious, we get so caught up in this thing that ultimately is causing us all of this pain. And so these pain bodies come up and they want to feed. Right? And so when we talk about pushing them down or not expressing something and keeping it inside us, it's like feeding those pain bodies. Right? And so we continue to feed them, and they're going, yeah. And they're getting angrier and more upset and more frustrated, just like the process that, Gollum going from a hobbit to Gollum went through in his, constant obsession over the ring. It's that same kind of idea that our obsessions over these painful experiences, they start to distort how we see things. And so every time we keep it in, we feed that a little bit more and a little bit more. And at some point we have to say, no, you don't get fed anymore. Right? That's not what I want to feed. Right? And it doesn't mean that they don't come up to feed sometimes and they don't try to get our attention, because they do.
Of course. Yeah.
They do. And sometimes they get away with it and you go, all right, yep, I got that again. Okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
All right. And then
tomorrow's another day.
Yeah. But one of the other things with communication that was coming up for me as you were talking, and even through some of the chat discussion here, is our communication with source, whatever that is for you, whether that be God, universe, higher power, light, love, whatever it is. But that needs to be a part of our daily practice. And if we're not constantly in communication with truth, light, love, source, our communications with each other are not going to be as clear as they can be. Right?
So what would you say to somebody that says, well, I don't get messages, or I don't communicate with source?
It's not about getting messages.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about receiving the energy and being in that energy.
Yeah. It's about letting go of knowing and accepting that there's more, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Because if I can do that on a foundational level, I can do that with you when you upset me.
And knowing that we're all one. So when you get upset with somebody else, you are getting upset with yourself.
Yeah.
So why don't we have compassion for them? as you would show yourself. Now, having said that, I know tons of people that show way more compassion to other people than they do to themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
And they trust the opinions of other people more than they trust the opinions of themselves.
Yep.
And worry about what other people think more than what's their true self and what is true to them. Yeah.
But that's all part of the work, though. This is all part of our journey. You know, this is what we're here to do is discover all of these things.
But this is where communication is so important, because, you know, there's all these talks too about like spiritual journeys and stuff, and the idea of like the hermit, right? And there's so much about you can only go so far when you're alone.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, there will be things that come up and there will be trials and tribulations. Sure, that's going to happen no matter what. But there's certain things that you can learn and grow when you're in communication with others that you will never have if you're alone. And so just for that, communication and the ability to work on it, not perfect it, just work on it, is amazing for our growth and well-being.
Yeah. And there's no perfect communication, right? So we can't, this whole, I just don't want people feeling like they're not communicating effectively and they're never going to get there, right? None of us are perfect. We are all in this learning journey that we call life, right? So we are all on this journey of, I guess I could have done that a little better. All right, well, the journey is next time, maybe I'll try harder to do it this way. Yeah. And sometimes we catch ourselves and sometimes we don't. And so part of the compassion for this communication stuff is about showing yourself that compassion and being like, okay, it's all right. Like you would when children are learning, right? You're like, it's okay. You did all right. You're going to do better next time. It's all right. Like you're not necessarily saying what they did was okay, but you're reassuring them that it's okay that they didn't do what they had hoped to do. And so if we can approach that with ourselves in the same way, I think that will be very helpful for communication, because then it gives you the courage to speak, because sometimes we're so afraid to speak our truth that we don't speak anything.
Yeah.
And then that's not communication either. So,
yeah.
So we have another couple comments here. So we've got fabulous sharing. Thank you, Susan. It's awesome. All the smiley faces and stuff. And then we've got, it's all learning until we don't learn. Yeah, it doesn't go away. It's a lifelong journey, right?
Yeah.
Our whole learning journey is lifelong. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. But we will repeat the same patterns until we've learned the lesson. And then we move on to new patterns that we have to learn the lesson for, and so on and so forth.
And we're fighting against. We are challenged with our patterns because they're habits, and it's tough to change habits. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it can be challenging. The more ingrained it is, right, in our subconscious, but the more awareness we can bring to it, the more we can change those communication habits and the communication styles that we've been used to.
Yeah.
We have to bring awareness to it to be able to change anything, and even want to change. I mean, there are people that don't want to change their communication style.
Yeah.
They think they're fine.
Yeah.
And, that's just where they're at.
Yeah.
That's where they're at.
Yeah. I think, too, when it comes to, kind of looping back, we're talking about the expectations of communication.
Yes.
Right? Because so many times I've talked with clients, friends, everybody, even processed it through myself, right? This idea of, well, I just want them to understand what I'm feeling.
Right.
Can
they ever really understand what you're feeling?
Yeah.
To me, that's okay. I would like, I'm feeling misunderstood.
Yeah.
I'm feeling unappreciated. I'm feeling unloved. So you want them to feel what you're feeling so that they understand that you are feeling those things. So but not everybody can feel what other people are feeling either, right?
No, and I
It's
think
just not their capacity.
And I think that's it, because we end up getting caught up in these desired communications. I'm
Right.
communicating this because I want this outcome. That it's no longer communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's an important distinction too, right? Because when we get into this place of, I just need you to know this. Okay, well, if it's the grocery list, sure. It's definitive, it's clear, it is what it is. But when it comes to how we feel about an experience, our interpretation of it, what we see, the way that we, manage through it, any of that, we have to understand that not everybody has the capacity to hear us or understand what we're trying to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sure, we can try to communicate it with somebody, but if they're not getting it, communicating it over and over again isn't necessarily
help.
to help.
Yeah. And that's even when you're communicating like concepts and stuff, right? Like we have to sort of meet people where they're at if we're going to take them on that. I kind of see it as a bit of a journey. Communication, it's a bit of a journey. And if we're trying to communicate with them up here and they're not there, they're down here, how about we come down, or even over here? Like it doesn't have to be up and down, like whatever, we're over here and they're over here. We sometimes we have to go here to take them along this journey before they're here with us, right? Yeah. So how do we sort of bridge that? It's like bridging.
Yeah. I also think though that we take ourselves really seriously.
Yes.
We often think we're more important than we are. And I say that with the most love as I can, because if we have a message that we are feeling needs to be given, right? And I think about this even like with our talks and stuff like that. If I have something that is an inspired message, it's not my job to make sure that everybody understands it. It's going to hit the people who need to hear it.
That's right. Yeah. And
the rest, it might just be a seed. Mm-hmm. And they might hear it 10 more times in other places and then suddenly be like, this thing I just heard and blah, blah, blah. And it suddenly takes bloom.
Yeah.
It's not on us to always make sure the other person gets the full message, right? That's between them and their source, however that works, to help them to understand on whatever level they're at to understand it. Mm-hmm. Our job is to give the message as it's given to us or given through us, right? Yeah. And so, I appreciate Facebook user communication as a two-way street. And in a lot of ways it is. So what I'm talking about more is messaging than, the day-to-day kind of communication pieces. Yeah. But when it comes to that deeper aspect of who we are, there is going to be less people who we can have those communications with. And there is going to be less people who can hear us. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I know it can be lonely and I know it can be hard, but it's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's an important piece too, because sometimes, and we've talked about this before, you start communicating and sometimes people look at you and they're like, what in the world is this person even talking about? It's okay, right? I'm not going to try to rephrase it 20 different ways to see if maybe one of them will click, because if it's a message from source, it's a message from source. Yep. And yeah.
So I'm not sure who this is from. It's all about allowing people to choose what they feel ready for and loving them while they find their way, instead of going into judgment and fixing mode.
Yes.
As we find compassion for ourselves and allow others divine timing for our healing, we have, and I don't know how to put the rest of this down there, so I'll just read it. We have compassion for others as well, and we hold a space of love for all of us to evolve and grow at our own pace. It is pure, unconditional love. It is such a beautiful process. Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's so many key things in there about, divine timing and about us. We're not in judgment or fixing mode. Really allowing the space in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even with simple communications, that's all really valid. But I think sometimes we get very caught up in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And we can look at these things on a deeper spiritual level when it comes to more in-depth communications.
Oh, hi, Angelica.
That's awesome, thank you. But bringing that even into our day-to-day experience is really important, right? How many times do we get upset with, our partners or our kids or our coworkers or whatever for minute things? But I've said it so many times. This is what I want to happen. And come on.
Yeah.
Right. And so bringing in that, because the judgment's right there. Why can't you, come on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of
so,
human to have judgment, right? It's difficult to step out of that, really. We've all been programmed, and we have to make like judgment calls. So we always have to be kind of looking at things to decide what resonates with us. Even what resonates with us is a judgment, right? Does this feel good? Does it not feel good? That's still kind of a judgment. It's about where the judgment's coming from.
Yeah. And I think bringing awareness to the process is really key.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I walk into a scenario and I'm aware of the fact that this is my judgment that is making me feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be way more open.
Yeah.
Than if I'm not aware of that fact.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not that we suddenly become these, superhumans who have no judgments and no, biases and, all of our past is cleared and we're not carrying it. No.
No.
But if we're aware
doesn't work that way.
of it,
yeah,
then we have the power, right? Because we can say, yeah, okay, this is a trigger for me. And
yeah.
when this happens, this is a typical judgment. All right, doesn't make it true, but this is how I'm feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, where do I want to go from here?
It's that silent observer thing when we talk about the drama triangle and pulling ourselves out to be that observer, right? Before we jump in, if we're going to jump in, which doesn't really help.
Yeah.
But
No.
we do tend to do it on occasion.
We don't have to, jump in, and the need for addressing things changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I could say something. I could also not.
Maybe I'll just do some work on that piece that's triggered in me, right? Boy, they really triggered that uncomfortable thing. Okay, I need to work on that. So maybe I'll do some Ho'oponopono. Maybe I'll do some journaling. Maybe I'll, meditate on that for a little bit and see what comes up. Maybe I need to express it somehow. I know Anona is a talented artist, so, maybe I'm going to paint about it. So, you see however that expression comes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But allowing it to flow, right? Going right back to what we were talking about before. Allowing that flow to happen allows us to communicate in a more authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's nothing wrong with, and I think we feel like we have to have an answer before we can do it. So we jump to these rash conclusions.
Yeah.
And then we just spit it out and say, this is what I think. And it's like, well, then afterwards we're kind of like, oh, I don't really want to commit to that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
If we can say, I'm still in process, I don't know.
Yeah.
I need some time. Right? Or as of this moment, this is what I'm feeling, but I'm still processing.
And it's okay. It's okay to change our mind too.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay to adjust how we feel about something. I mean, that's something that we think that, is this, there's that whole thing. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Right? Because people get like, And really they want to change their mind, but they're getting frustrated because they can't change their mind because that makes them look a certain way that they don't want to look. And so they get even more militant, and really it's not necessary.
Oh, no.
You know, I've had that
be able to
happen
change
with
our
people.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about because again, like going back to the human design thing, right? And I'm thinking about like manifestors, right? And one of their strategies really is like they have to communicate what they're doing, right? And because of the way they process, they have to try something before they know if it's right for them or not. So there's a lot of crying and going, and then out, right? And that can lead to some problems if you're not communicating. I'm just trying this and I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or if it's like, no, this really isn't for me. I'm getting a strong no after I've started. You have to communicate that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a lot of, times where we culturally are being told like, no, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. But for some people, that's exactly how they have to do it. It's in their programming, it's in their setup, it's in their DNA, it's how they're wired, right? In this lifetime to operate. And so they have to have permission to be that way. But in order for that to work, they have to communicate.
Yes.
Right. And so, I think that we have to bring that kindness and compassion in. Right. I love the idea of that unconditional love because, we live in conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But can I, the Ra who channeled in human design, one of the things he says is, the best way to love somebody is allow them to be who they are. Right. And
accept
so
the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we can communicate in such a way that we allow ourselves to be who we are and we allow the other to be who they are, it's a very different communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would be your open, honest, authentic communication from the heart.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And that feels like a lovely spot to finish up for the day. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We had some beautiful interactions, and I really appreciate all of you sharing your wonderful energy with us here. And what have we got coming up? We have a workshop next week with Ramsey with the Twillow Lifestyle Academy. So that's coming up next week, and it's about meeting your guides, right? So stay tuned for that. What else have we got coming up? I should just pull up the calendar.
Twillow Fusion.
We have Twillow Fusion in 2 weeks, right?
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, because we just did one on Friday. So in another 2 weeks, we have another Twillow Fusion coming up. And I am pulling up the calendar so I can share.
Much better than having to remember. I don't know.
It is indeed. Oh, this week is actually our Menopause Magic Week.
Oh, cool.
So we are, if there's anyone out there that, is starting down that road and wants some help with that, we have nutrition for menopause for our Menopause Magic Week. So Nicole Coleman will be teaching about some of the ways to support the hormonal system for that. And then we also have, so Ruth and I are teaching about crystals and oils to support you through menopause. And this goes for perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopausal, right? So that whole piece. And then on Sunday, we have strategies with Dr. Karen Stillman, who is a retired obstetrician. And so knows all about those, hormonal fluctuations. So, we're all there to help support you through this. And there is a special rate there for the Menopause Magic Week as well. So take a look at that and watch Facebook and all of the events. You can find the rest of the events on twillowlifestyle.ca. Oh, Meet Your Inspirer. This is the name of Ramsey's. It's Meet Your Inspirer. So meeting your guides. I have Healing Crystal Basics on next week. And yeah, we have a Magic Day coming up on the 29th. Going to talk about sacred symbols, candle magic, talismans and charms, all that fun stuff. So there's lots coming up. Stay tuned. And again, thank you all for sharing your energy. And I wish you all tons of love and light. Jen, did you want to finish up with anything?
Well, I don't have anything else to share as far as what's coming up. One thing I do want to share, especially right now, and this is something that Tanis, we had talked about before, but not on the show, that for the next little bit, sleep might be off. And if you're waking up a lot, if you're having trouble making it through the night, it's okay. It's part of what's just happening right now with the transits.
Yes.
Give yourself some patience, give yourself some time, know where you are, know what you need. If you need to take a nap in the middle of the day, take a nap in the middle of the day. If you need to go slower, go slower. Give yourself the patience and the care that you need as you just get through this week. And it's going to impact communication for sure, because when we're tired, it impacts how we feel.
We have a lot less capacity to have awareness when we're tired.
So just take the time to be really mindful of where you're at any given moment. And if you're feeling tired, honor it. It's okay.
And please have compassion for others that are going through the same thing, because it's all of us right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So awesome. And Jen, where can we find you, please?
Yeah, you can find me at myholisticself.com or myholisticselfcounseling.com, Jennifer at myholisticself.com, and on Facebook, oh golly, I didn't look it up between last time and now. I think it's Holistic Self Counseling.
You can also book a discovery session with Jen at twillowlifestyle.ca. And I am Tanis Coughlin. I'm founder of Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. And we're thrilled to share all this with you on Twillow Talk. And have an awesome week, everyone. And we'll see you next Monday.
Awesome.